welcome back to Cross Stitch the Globe. My name is Stephanie and this is a channel about cross stitch. Today we're going to talk about 10 things that you never need to buy new. Whether you are just a thrifty cross stitcher or you are dipping your toes into being a thrifty cross stitcher, or you just like going to thrift stores for fun and you want to know what is common to find there, or whether you are like me and trying to be a more conscious consumer in a world that really makes it difficult. I'm going to share with you guys 10 things that I think any stitcher, whether you're trying to save money or just purchase secondhand because it's better for the planet, can find in a thrift store or on the secondhand market. But maybe not instantly. We'll talk about like what's you can always find and what's like you kind of got to be on the lookout for. And then we're going to talk about some things where I have, there are opportunities. So we're going to do 10 things that I think you can always find secondhand. Then I have 6 things that I think that while I would love to buy them secondhand and even at times have tried and failed to buy them secondhand, they might be a little bit harder. So if you are somebody who never wants to buy anything new ever and you want any of these things, you want to be on the lookout for earlier or more often. They definitely exist on the secondhand market, but they are harder. And then I have 2 things that I will never buy secondhand that I would always buy new. All right, let's dive in. I have a secondhand shopping channel. Actually, I haven't posted on there in a little while, but a new video is coming hopefully tomorrow. I filmed it. I just got to edit it. Anyway, that channel is called Stephanie Shops Secondhand, and that is kind of where I like to explore the world of secondhand shopping. But every once in a while, I make you guys do it with me, whether that's going on a thrifty cross-stitch vlog at a thrift store, or doing vintage and thrifted cross-stitch hauls, that some of which is listed in my Etsy shop. It's something that like has become a big part of my life over the year. Well, it's been a big part of my life for a long time. It has increasingly become a big part of my life over the last year to 2 years. And I recently did a video on this channel called like things I learned from my $9,000 cross-stitch stash. And I shared some of the things in that video. Like I shared the things I have been experiencing from the like point of view of someone who's like selling secondhand cross-stitch stuff. This video is from the point of view of someone who is using secondhand cross-stitch stuff and wants to look for it. Partially because when I go into, you never know what you're going to find when you go into a thrift store. So even though I like to, when we've done like thrifting cross-stitch videos, it's fun to point out like, oh, what would I normally look for? But you take home to the thrift store what the thrift store gives you. So like, you can't always know, and so they're not like a compendium of knowledge on this stuff. And then I have a video about shopping for cross-stitch stuff on eBay, which is, I think, still, even though we filmed that a long time ago, I'll link to it in the description. I still think the tips in that video are exactly what I would use to shop eBay today. I know more about eBay shopping, but I would still use all those tips. Now, so that's kind of the world that we're coming in. But the reason I wanted to do this video specifically is that I got inspired by Alyssa Barber. I will link her channel below. Her channel is like all about becoming a conscious consumer. And I also will link to Project No Buy, which her channel is also about becoming conscious consumers. Both of their channels have been things that I have turned to in between Flosstube episodes. Have been really good for, like just thinking about all of my shopping habits. I think in some ways cross stitch is like one of the easiest places to do secondhand shopping. And so it was, and it's very rewarding. It's a grading hobby. So you do tend to find a lot of stuff at thrift stores. And then also you tend to buy a lot of stuff from small businesses and small artisans. So like, when you are buying something new, it's very easy to be like, I'm directly supporting a small business. But both of their channels have helped me think about like all my consumer habits in total and not just my cross-stitch consumer habits. But I thought this video would be helpful because if you were dipping your toe in, or if you just like want to know what's out there, This is after, you know, 6 months of running that thrifting channel. 4 months, 5, 6, almost 6 months. I started in November, December, so yeah, 6 months. Oops. So, and then also just constantly going to thrift stores and stuff. I lost my train of thought. But anyway, I have learned a lot about shopping cross-stitch stuff secondhand because even though I'm not always looking for cross-stitch when I go in, I always pass the craft section. So even if I don't buy it, I kind of get an idea of what's out there. So, okay. Here are the things I would never buy new, knowing what I know now about going to thrift stores. And I tend to go thrift stores first, and then, but I also do like Facebook Marketplace, eBay, any like secondhand shopping situations. The first thing I would never buy new, knowing what I know now about how much is out there, is plain Aida. Any count. I have found 3 packages of 18 count white Aida at thrift stores this week. Now 2 packs were at a craft thrift store. I went to a craft thrift store. I'm going to show you guys that video this weekend. But the other one was just at a regular thrift store. Plain 18 count Aida. I found plain navy Aida. Any color, usually white or cream. But I also, if I was like wanting to play with dyeing my own Aida, I would always go to a thrift store first. Because yes, you can go to Amazon, you can buy blankets of Aida. I have one for not that much money. But it is so much better to go to find old Aida that's like new in package, Charles Craft Aida, and over dye it yourself if you want a different look. But if you're looking for just plain or cream, or if you wanted something to dye, I even have started playing around with dyeing like the old colored stuff because it gives you a different base so that the dye comes out a little bit differently. But if you want plain Aida, that's not like a unique hand-dyed Aida, but just like plain white, navy, even black, or old school colors, whether to stitch directly on the color that you buy or to use as basis for dyeing, I would always start out with the thrift store. And even Facebook Marketplace, I've gotten, for $35, I got like a bag of this big of cross-stitch stuff when I first started. A lot of that stuff ended up being floss, where I took the DMC out and I sold the non-DMC, and then some of it ended up being like hoops and tools and things, but a lot of it was just packages of old Aida because people do tend to stock fabric. Older fabric tends to be Aida. There didn't used to be as much other kinds around. So I have found like secondhand linen and secondhand Lugana, but I wouldn't put that on a list of like never buying it new because that's not always possible. But it would be entirely possible unless you needed a sheet of Aida that was like specifically huge size for some specific project. It would be possible to stitch almost anything you want on Aida without ever buying it new. Now you may say like, well, I want to do like a big Mirabilia or something. There's tons of rolls of it, and even the current craft stores like stuff that you might go buy, there are people who are selling that stuff secondhand. So if you're thinking about Aida, think secondhand. Plain Aida. All right, hoops. I am obviously very particular about my hoops. I like a vintage hoop. We have a video where I showed you guys my parade of vintage hoops, and I've only acquired a couple since then, so I will link to that in the description. But let's say you don't want a fancy vintage hoop. Vintage screw top hoops, I think, are much higher quality than modern screw top hoops and pretty easy to come by, not expensive. But then also, like, our thrift stores and craft thrift stores are overflowing with basic craft store hoops because they're cheap, so people buy them, but they don't try to resell them. And then a million kits have had them come in them, and tons of people will buy hoops and then only stitch 1 or 2 things. Like, I would never, if I wanted okay, when I started, I bought a ton of hoops from the craft store. I would never do that again. Even if I wanted like something to use a hoop for a hoop finish, if it wasn't a hoop I already had, I would buy a craft store hoop or a thrift store hoop, because one, sometimes they're older and cooler and weirder looking. Two, if you just want a plain one, just get a plain one that's used, especially if you're not going to use it ever again. But then also, like, people like Lindsay Swearingen, who wrote the book Creepy Cross Stitch, they have some of the coolest finishes in old hoops. And like old spring top hoops and stuff are so common that I wouldn't like finish something in a princess hoop unless it was a broken one or something. But if I was going to finish something in like a spring top hoop, metal hoop, not like wood, but a metal spring hoop, or like the cool like roller hoops and stuff, you can find those in so many thrift stores. So I would just never, unless I was needing a specific kind of hoop, like a Morgan hoop or a Nerd hoop, if I just wanted a plain hoop, or if I wanted a cool hoop to do as a fit, like for a finish, I would always go to a thrift store for that first. All right, and then obviously vintage hoops, you're only going to buy those. You might find ones at thrift stores, I have, but for those secondhand, you're more likely to find, I found them more often on Facebook Marketplace and eBay. All right, frames. Now, when I talk about cross stitch items and I think of the types of things I spend money on for cross stitch, I include frames in my cross stitch budget because I include any finishing stuff, because the craft, unless you don't fully finish your pieces, unless they just go straight to an under the bed box, which is totally fine. If you have any intention of like finishing them, those fully finishing pieces, frames or like special kits and things, can be on the expensive side. And so I highly value when I find a cool thrift store frame, and unfortunately I have hoarded too many of them. But on my first thrifting video, which is like one of our more popular videos, so it still gets views and it will get comments from people that don't like ever watch any of our other stuff. I got like a really mean comment the other day that was like, you don't even talk about cross stitch because you're just talking about frames. Well, honey, I did delete her comment and I'm not gonna like blast her publicly, but like, I think frames are part of my cross stitch budget, because if I stitch this piece and then I need to get it custom framed and spend a lot of money for that, or I need to learn how to frame it myself, then the money I put into the full finish is part of my cross stitch. And if I get a really expensive kit, like let's say I kit up a really expensive memorabilia and I want to frame it in something glorious, I'd much rather go to the thrift store and find a really beautiful custom frame, and at that point I can either frame it myself or I can take it to a framer. You can take a frame to a craft store that has framing services and they will charge you an upcharge. I think last time I was charged $25 for their service to frame it. It's, what piece was it? It was this one. So I found this frame at a thrift store. This is Delia Conger. This is by Antique Needleworker. I love this sampler. I found this frame at the thrift store. Actually found two of them. And I thought the flowers on this frame matched the flowers on the bottom so pretty. And I thought it made it, the sampler, so much more interesting. But see that little, I couldn't get it to line up. I tried and tried and tried and tried. So I took the thrifted frame to the thrift store and they charged me, I think $25 or $30. And they charged me $25 or $30 to get it in there, which at that point I was like, fine. But if I'd asked them to, like if I had ordered the frame there, it would have been so much more expensive. So finding cool, weird old frames for $4, for $2, and then either finishing them myself or paying someone to then frame them is a great way to keep those frames out of landfills. I personally feel like old weird frames are better. They show the character. Like, that's new. That was off Amazon because it was like a weird size. But that's thrifted, that's thrifted, that's thrifted. And I love the thrifted frames. I feel like they make such a big difference and they're fun to thrift, but also they're easy to thrift because anything that a cross stitcher uses, that we use for something specific, but the rest of the world uses too, is way easier to find in the thrift store. So like it's easy to go in a thrift store and find Aida occasionally. You won't find it every time. You will find a frame in a thrift store every time. And then you can just be like, okay, but is it the frame for me? And weird sizes. You can find weird sizes of frames. I have started writing down the measurement. I got this tip, I think from Lindy Stitches. So Stephanie's video about lacing cross stitch items, I think is an amazing lacing video. And when I realized that even her beautiful, gorgeous models were typically laced at home, and a lot of her frames, she uses other frames, she buys some new frames because there's some things she does that are specific, but some of her frames are still thrift store frames. That I was like, you know what, I need to get better at this. I need to force myself to always be fully finishing my stuff so that I can see at the end of the tunnel. Like I won't get better unless I keep trying. So now my rule is like, I got to try to fully finish it within like 4 weeks of it being done. And I need to try myself. Now, if I fail, if I try 3 or 4 times and I can't get it right, I can take it in. But I need to force myself to try. And then she had the tip of writing down the frame sizes that you need and keeping them in your phone so that when you're at thrift stores, you can say like, okay, my chatelaine is this big. My Mirabilia is this big. Right now, yesterday, on Monday, I dropped an interview with the Primitive Needle, with Mariah from the Primitive Needle, who told the story about her mother. And when she started re-releasing her mother's patterns, I bought Annie Hyssop's Harvest Moon. I started stitching it. It is kind of be a weird finishing size. I think the frame size is like, I try to give myself an inch of like wiggle room, but it's going to be between like 7 and 8 by 13 to 14. I found a frame that size yesterday, but what I found wasn't like a typical picture frame. It was like a word art frame. So I'm going to take the word art out and frame my piece in it when I finish. So frames, every thrift store, every garage sale pretty much has frames. And then it's just about finding ones that fit your style and deciding if you want to actually be the one to frame it or if you want to take it in to do that part. And then keeping the measurements because our pieces are not always made to go in a standard frame size. All right, number 4 goes with frames, other finishing supplies. I posted a video on my other channel about this warehouse sale that I went to I think I went in December. And I went again this morning to the craft thrift store warehouse sale. And it was so much fun, and it has fabric and lace trimmings and felts and like anything that we use to fully finish our pieces, wooden boards, that stuff exists at the thrift store because people will overbuy or have something for a project that never gets finished and then that thing goes to the thrift store. I have several pieces here that are like wicker. I've showed recently a wicker chair like that I bought that I want to stitch on. So like if you're looking for things literally to stitch on, or if you're looking for like finishing, like I'm not going to, but you could do a cross stitch in this old wooden tennis racket. I'm not going to, I like the racket as is, but old things to stitch on, but also wooden finishing boards and frames. If you're willing to figure out and envision kind of ahead of time how you want to finish that project, then you can be on the lookout for pieces that will go with that. And then sometimes too, you'll just get inspired by something that you see and be like, oh, that should be a finished piece. And you'll take it home and then you can decide. I'm finishing a Frosted Tiny Town, like hopefully before my next Flosstube, which will come out on Monday. So I'm recording this on Thursday and I need to fully finish this thing by Monday. But I bought a word art sign that said like laugh or something, and I sanded off the words because it was anyway. And now it's just like this cool wooden board that already has the hanging hardware in it, and I'm gonna finish. I need to lace the Tiny Town to a piece of foam core and put some trim around it. And the foam core that I'm going to use, the trim that I'm going to use, and the board that I'm going to use all came from thrift stores. And it was just And I didn't know, it's not, none of them, well, no. The trim and the board were things I'd purchased in the past just because I know the kind of stuff comes up in cross stitch. But the board I bought specifically for this Frosted Tiny Town, I Make It Murder piece. And if you watch my Flosstube on Monday and I am not showing that as a fully finished object, please call me out in the comments. All right, so any finishing supply that is not, doesn't mean that there won't be something specific where you need to go to the craft store or you need to order stuff on Amazon. I'm just saying with a little bit of like foresight into like, this is what's going to be finished pretty soon. This is the kind of finish I want to do it in. You can get it done. I will say some objects that I brought home from the thrift store to use as finishing objects didn't work out. I bought this, I thought wooden. Turns out not wooden. I'll tell you. Okay. So I bought this nautical wooden clock. The clock didn't work and it had these lighthouses in the middle, and I thought that it was a wooden like ship's wheel, and inside was like plaster casting of these like lighthouses. It's difficult to explain and I took no pictures because what happened was so embarrassing. So I was going to finish my other Make It Murder piece because I finished Hello Summer by Erin Elizabeth, and I was going to finish it in there. I thought it'd be so cool because it's got a lighthouse. I thought it'd be so cool in this like nautical ship's wheel frame. So I took a hammer and I was trying to like hammer out the plaster. I was trying to get the plaster out, and it turns out that the thing was glass. The entire thing was glass, none of it was wood, and it just started breaking everywhere, and that was destroyed. I only paid $4 for it, but I did feel terrible. Anyway, so getting your finishing supplies, secondhand, fabric. Like this room has so many finishing supplies in it, like, but mostly like fabric and trim and chenille and like, because people just overbuy that stuff at the craft store and then it goes to the thrift store. Like that happens all the time. Even though I couldn't like know that I was going to go into a store and definitely find that kind of stuff, I find it often, and I find it more often at like local stores than a Goodwill. The wooden stuff, yeah, but like the trim and the fabric and stuff, Goodwill tends to not value the things I value about thrift stores. And so if I was like, I need to find some fabric, I would go to like a local thrift store, not my local Goodwill, because some of that stuff just disappears. But that's what I would, if I needed any finishing supplies. And it's not that you can't find really cool stuff, because you can, especially like at a craft thrift store. It's just that like, you know, how many yards of fabric is the world really using compared to how many we're producing? A lot of it's getting bought. People have extras. Somebody makes a whole quilt. They have this much scrap extra, goes to the thrift store, and your cross stitch pillow is 4x4. Like, you don't need that much. So any finishing supplies. And then also there's old cool things like Sudbury. My friend sent me a Sudbury drum kit, but they also have old Sudbury trees and stuff, and that kind of stuff is really cool too. So there's some very high quality finishing kits out in the world as well. All right, display items. So let's say you made a whole bunch of pillows with your thrifted cross stitch fabric and your thrifted backing fabric and your thrifted trim, and what are you going to put them in? Well, you can buy your display item at the thrift store too. Cake stands, dough bowls, baskets, plant stands. Those are things that we have decided we use for cross stitch display, but normal people, other people who aren't us, display other things on them like cakes and plants, and I don't know what normal people put in their dough bowls, but you know, they're there. Old ones in thrift stores, you can find cool old vintage ones that will be different than anything that anyone else has. But I live in a town where one of the 2 remaining major craft stores in America that are like chains, one of the 2 that's left is headquartered here. So guess what is full of our thrift stores? All that stuff. So it might be a local thrift store and they might be carrying like a national chain dough bowl, but it's better for the planet, it's better for my budget if I buy that dough bowl locally. So if I wanted something unique and interesting to display a bunch of cross-stitch finishes, you know, honestly, I think old spice racks and spool racks and things are more fun, and that's the kind of stuff you're only going to find on the secondhand market. But even if there was something where I was like, oh, a craft store is going to sell a really good doable, I would still go to my thrift store to look and see, because one of those is going to trickle down. Number 6, technology. So when I bought my iPad at the beginning of 2022, I bought it because I was going to be so productive business-wise, and then I didn't really end up using it. And then a year later, when I started cross-stitching, I was like, oh, now this is my new best friend. I use this thing every single day. Like, app that I really use it for is my Markup RXP. That's because this is a MacBook. If I had a Android tablet, I probably would have gone with Pattern Keeper, just because that is a lot less expensive, because it's a one-time purchase as opposed to an annual. But you can take in the Valentine's Day Paw Patrol stickers my kids wanted me to stick on the cover. But if this were to break or I were to lose it, it's a good reminder I need to export all of my progress. I haven't done that in a while. But if something were to happen to it and I was going to get a new tablet, I would not buy a $700 tablet again if the main thing it's going to be is my cross-stitch marker. I would definitely buy a refurbished secondhand market one, because I just need so little from I just do such little things on it. Yes, I do. It does connect to my Dropbox, so I buy a pattern or I scan it. Like if I buy a paper pattern and scan it, or if I buy a digital pattern, I save them in my Dropbox and then I download it to my iPad. And so it is helpful that it connects to the Dropbox, but I just need a tablet that can receive files, ignore how dirty it is, that can receive files and run Markup RXP. And so I would go look for the best deal on something that could do that. I would never buy a new piece of technology just for it to become my cross-stitch sidekick. Now, am I glad that I already had this and I love it? I love it. Do I hope it lasts forever? Despite planned obsolescence, I do hope it lasts forever. I know it won't, because Allison had a much older iPad and the new Markup RXP no longer works on her iPad. So I gotta keep a bridge of those kinds of things, but I will never buy a new piece of technology just to do cross stitch on. When there are so many secondhand tablets and things of people who are always looking for the next upgrade. And I'm trying not to even upgrade my phone, even though can't use it for recording anymore, because it has a tiny scratch that is only over the camera. So that's very frustrating. But anyway, so technology wise, and I would actually, let's say this broke, I would go get another tablet, because this is not big enough for my brain. I'm a kind of person whose brain really likes a big internet, a medium internet, and a small internet for different things. And I do feel like when I open the small internet, it's a different internet than the large internet. I really do have too many Apple products, and if something happened to my laptop, I would have to replace it because it's my entire livelihood. But I'm trying not to replace my phone just to deal with the camera situation. I know my phone screen will crack more. At that point, I'll get a new one. And I really don't want to replace this until it's absolutely obsolete. Okay, but I keep turning it off like I'm not going to keep using it, but my notes are on it. I guess I use it for two things. I use it as my notes for videos, and I use it for my cross-stitch stuff. Okay, storage and organization. That is another area where everyone needs to be organized and have storage. And I hate that a lot of my organization and storage stuff are things I bought I bought brand new Target binders, I bought brand new Walmart shelves. Not that the stuff didn't do what it was supposed to do, but it was just such a lost opportunity to buy something secondhand that would be like, look a little cooler in my craft room, please. Like, let's have some, I mean, every piece of furniture in here actually, with the exception of this file cabinet, which was My parents kept it in their garage for 20 years waiting for the day I needed it again because they're wonderful. Everything else in here is actually brand new. And I kind of hate that aesthetically and vibes wise. It's not really where I am, but I'm not going to replace it because I'm not going to go out and replace perfectly good stuff with vintage stuff just for the vibes. Like, the stuff that's in here is what's going to be in here. But what a lost opportunity. It would have been so much cooler for the same amount of money or way less to go buy some cool wooden bookshelves from the thrift store. Used binders are a little bit harder to come by, but used file cabinets and file systems are not. And like, used binders are only hard to come by if you want 7 to match. But if you don't need them all to match, like, or you are sane and you don't need 7 pattern binders, like, you don't need to buy that stuff new. Even the protector sheets, every craft store, I keep saying craft store, every thrift store has like an office section. And if you go to thrift stores a lot, you'll end up finding stuff. So much of the time, like, organizational systems really need to be like figured out slowly over time anyway. Like, what's best for you will kind of like appear to you. And that means that like you have time just to go to thrift stores and be like, oh, will that work? Will that work? I do want a bigger, I'm so happy I still have this file cabinet, and yet I hate it. It, like, the functionality on it's not great. So I do hope one day to find like a really cool wooden file cabinet at the thrift store. And I may switch some things around and stuff, but my entire craft room could be organized much better with secondhand stuff. I even yesterday, I'm going to show it in my thrift haul video this weekend, but I thrifted like for $8 this old vintage Burlington sewing bench table thing. It's so cool. I'm not going to keep it because I don't have a place to put it. But so I'm going to put it on Etsy. But it's so cool and weird, and it was $8. That was so much better than a $60 cabinet from Target. You know, like, just, I look around this room and I see, now, okay, all this stuff wasn't bought for this room. A lot of it was bought for things that are old apartment, and it became stuff for this room. But I still look around and see, like, you know, $600 worth of shelves and storage boxes and stuff that could have been $200 from the right thrift store. Like, you know, storage and organization are like the perfect place to save a ton of money, find stuff that is way cooler, be better for the planet, don't have a bunch of plastic crap that's not going to last a decade. This stuff will all last a while, so I'm not just going to get rid of it. But it's not going to last as long as it would have if I'd bought cool wooden shelves from the thrift store. Okay, this next one is like very specific and weird, but you know, if you know, you know. So Allison likes to make her own needle minders, and we made a video like early on our channel about how to make your own needle minders. We made 2. We did like one that was easy and one that was like harder. And I will link to both of those below. Like, but, so the next thing I would never buy new is needle minder covers or fronts. Have I been like at a store and been like, oh yeah, that would make a cool needle minder? Yeah, I have. And I have bought those. But going forward, I just wouldn't, because the thrift stores have so much weird old stuff. If I was like going to make a batch of needle minders, I would go to the thrift store and see what they have. I actually have about 10 Santa, like vintage Santa wooden buttons that I want to turn into needle minders. But if I was going to make a needle minder, I wouldn't go to the craft store and go to their buttons. I would go to the thrift store and go to their buttons and covers and pins and weird stuff. And some of that stuff is old and some of it is new that hasn't gotten used. But that's like a prime place to find stuff that is weird and different, or to find things that are meaningful to you. But I wouldn't like ever go buy one from now on. All right. This next one, the idea, I'm going to credit to Lollipop Stitches. So, pin cushion bases. So, on my thrifting channel, she saw something I saw in one of my videos and wanted to buy it, and did buy it. And showed it in one of her videos as a cool 1960s Japanese sheet that she's going to turn into a pin cushion. Like, she found, I mean, it was an old planter, so it had a perfect place for it. But if you want to make like a cool pincushion and you're looking for a base, go to the thrift store. The ceramic aisles of thrift stores have so many weird planters and pots and mugs and cups. You will definitely be able to find something cool and weird if you look around a little bit. And since that kind of thing is something that would sit in your stitching area, or maybe go in like your stitching box or something, having something that's unique and different and old, way better than just like going to the craft store and finding something that like is new. All right, this last one, we talked a little about it with storage, but furniture, any furniture that you are specifically buying for your cross-stitching setup, like a stitchy chair or whatever, buy it used. First of all, our stitching chairs get so much sitting in that the new furniture, unless you're spending a ton of money, new furniture just does not hold up very well. I will say that my stitchy chair is a hideous teal recliner that's so comfortable that I never want to get rid of it. And I'm really just considering, can I just redo the fabric on it and like get it recovered? Which like people will tell you like, well, that's silly because it would be as much as a new one. But a new one would be a piece of crap. And this one is like 30 years old, comfortable as AF, and wonderful. And like any kind of furniture, like especially if you're looking for like an old rocking chair, but really if you want an old or just a comfy easy chair or something, if you're trying to fit a specific, like if your whole house looks new, I can understand why that kind of furniture might be hard to fit in. But there's like new furniture on the secondhand market all the time too. So if you are watching this video because you are seriously looking at ways to increase your secondhand shopping consumption and decrease your buying new consumption, and you care about, you're trying to become a more conscious consumer, buying used furniture is a great way to do it, because like there's so much more furniture in the world than people that use it. So much is in landfills. And also like if my parents bought a couch in 1995, that couch is still good today. It's probably on its third cover, but it's still good. Every couch I've ever bought as an adult was crap by the time I got rid of it. And I, you know, like I can think of now, discount the ones I bought secondhand because I did buy my first few secondhand. As a grown-up, I bought 3 new couches, and after 2 or 3 years, they suck. Like they just are not good. So if you want like something that's like really long lasting, that can really be like your romantic sitting space where you do all of your cross stitching and you don't have to change in 4 or 5 years, get something vintage. But if you really want it to look modern and you want something modern, then buy secondhand just to be a conscious consumer. All right, those are the things that I personally would always go secondhand for first. Now, I'm not telling you need to or you have to. I'm just telling you that that is something that I see out there all the time, and it's available to you if you want to put in the time to find it. You're not going to find it every single time. You can't always go to thrift stores like they're a department store and hope to find it. But if you become someone who goes to thrift stores occasionally, you will find stuff. And then also there's always garage sales and garage sale deals. Oh, garage sale furniture prices. Oh my God. I got hand carved Slovenian 1980s wooden chairs that are now back in style. I didn't like them the first 5 years, but now they're back in style for like $40 for the set and the table. Oh, garage sale prices. All right. Here are the things that I would like to buy used sometimes, but also sometimes buy new, and understand the need to buy new. Things I have failed to buy secondhand when I've tried, or things that are more difficult to buy secondhand, but are things that sometimes I buy secondhand and sometimes I buy new. All right, so came up with 6 of them. So the first are stands. I bought a secondhand Lowry stand off eBay, and then I had to cancel the order because it said like I bought it because I wanted to save money, and the stand was only going to be like $115, and new from Lindy Stitches I think I paid $175, and I think the Amazon store that has them is like about the same. But but it said like shipping calculated at checkout. And most things to ship, you can ship most things for about 20 bucks. Now, things get more expensive than that, sure. But like, so I kind of knew that and I was like, okay, well, I'll still save some money. The thing was going to be $100 to ship. So I did go buy one new. If there's someone in your life who is giving away a frame or selling a frame, obviously that's great. They don't come up that often. And so if you really want to get a frame and you know, I bought my frame in like November, I would still be waiting to get a frame if I hadn't had purchased one new. So even though I do support buying secondhand frames, it is not the easiest thing to do. Second one, hand-dyed neutrals. So I think it's really easy to over dye stuff really bold and bright. I think it's harder to dye stuff subtly. And I'm not at a point yet where I feel like if I wanted to stitch something on like a really beautiful piece of hand-dyed linen, that I could get like a good neutral base. And the color of your neutral matters so much. So I would never feel bad about supporting a small business to get a hand-dyed neutral fabric. I mean, like, you know, Fox and Rabbit, Lakeside Linen, Bestitch Me, Oak Crown Studios, Tropical Stitches. Like, I love these places. They're all really small businesses, but even if I was trying to get something from Zweigart directly, Zweigart's not a big business by like Amazon standards, right? So like if I wanted to get the perfect hand-dyed neutral for a project, I would not feel guilty for 1 second about going and buying one of those pieces new. The caveat is that if you're someone who's truly trying to go into never buying anything new, there are lots of hand-dyed neutrals on the secondhand market that you can find. You're not going to save money. You might save it a little bit, but you're not going to save like a ton of money. But sometimes people do that buy like these kind of fabrics secondhand because they're not always in stock. Sometimes they can be like really hard to get. Like Lakeside Linen's hard to get. Like, and so when I went to sell what I decided to destash and not keep 25 years of fabric in my house, that stuff was like so easy to sell because it wasn't that I sold it for like a tiny bit less. It wasn't so much that, it's just that like you couldn't go buy it from 1-2-3 Stitch. So like if you wanted it, you had to pretty much buy it secondhand. So that's the reason people buy secondhand. But then also like destash groups and on Etsy or on Facebook destash groups, eBay Marketplace, Facebook Marketplace, they will occasionally have like nice secondhand fabric. I would say if I was gonna, let's say I wanted to buy a piece of like a hand-dyed neutral, a really beautiful hand-dyed neutral, and I was like really like, I'm gonna buy a secondhand piece, I would go to Facebook destash groups, and then I would be on the lookout for cross stitchers doing destashes on Instagram. That's where you get the best secondhand fabric because it's coming from people who bought it for themselves to use, know what it is, and are selling it like directly to other stitchers. That stuff is like, I have never walked into a thrift store and found like a Fox and Rabbit. So no, I'm not saying you can't buy that secondhand. You can. I've sold it. People sell it. People buy it. It's harder to plan around. So if I had an emergency where I needed to start a project tomorrow, I wouldn't like think twice about buying it new. But if I really was trying to never buy anything new ever, I could 100% never buy a piece of new fabric. That is totally possible. Okay. Linen. Have I bought secondhand linen? Yes, I have found on Facebook Marketplace and in thrift stores, I have found secondhand linen. It's older. It's usually Charles Craft or DMC. It's not my favorite kind of linen. But when the white DMC linen that I bought dyed so beautifully. The other kinds of linen that I have are like more neutral colors to begin with that I might when I like over dye or something, but really if I was going to stitch on them again, try to stitch with them again, I would put them in boiling water. But there's not like, I don't come across that all the time. Like today I went to a craft thrift store. I didn't see a single piece of linen, not even old stuff, but there was a lot of Aida and waste canvas and things. Oh, waste canvas is never, I would never buy waste canvas. So I should have put that in there. Waste canvas is so easy. I would never buy waste canvas new, knowing what I know now. But anyway, linen's harder. So if I wanted to buy secondhand linen, aside from what I told you about like specifically like nicer hand-dyed neutrals, if I just wanted to buy like plain basic, like if I wanted like a Zweigart white linen, it's harder to find. I do just tend to buy that when I see it for like $1 or whatever. But another thing you can do, which this is something that Rosanna from Bright and Dusty, who thrifts all the time, something that she does is sometimes she'll buy like dinner napkins or, you know, other kind of tablecloths, like other things made of linen, but she stitches on higher counts than me. I don't really enjoy stitching above a 32. I can do a 36. I can do a 40 and I don't enjoy it. So when you buy a tablecloth or dinner napkins, if you can stitch on like anything, then you can be like, okay, I can probably handle this. Whereas I'm going to be like, that doesn't look like a 32 to me. But if you can handle stitching on a variety of counts, or if you want to figure out what the count of it is when you see it, that's something that's like so cool. She has pieces she's finished, and they're not always even weave. So sometimes they're a little bit fatter or a little bit narrower than the pattern. Different patterns look really good on that kind of thing. I wouldn't do a Mirabilia like that, but a Quaker like that would be like fine. So I don't have a problem buying linen new, but I am curious. I love when I come across linen in stores that I know I can dye, and I am curious about different types of linen, using different linens as bases if I can find one that I can comfortably see. Especially because that stuff usually has different color palettes and things. All right, the next one is project bags. So I love supporting project bag makers, and I have no problem. I don't think there's any problem spending money with a small business who's a project bag maker. A lot of these people are like one-person shops, right? But let's say you have a Dragon's Forge with the project bags like me, and the option is to buy new cosmetic bags or new Amazon zip bags, or to upcycle or repurpose something else. Well, I would go to a thrift store, and I have done this, and I've made a reel about it too. I go to the thrift store and look at like zippered makeup pouches, like things that are kind of like project bag shape. Some of them do tend to be smaller, but that is great for like travel project bags and things. So if you feel like you don't want to spend money on a project bag, or you have too many and you can't justify any more, but you have more things you want to kit up, $1 cosmetic bags at the local thrift store is way better than buying something off Amazon. I have some Amazon project bags. They're great. I'm not saying they're not good quality. I'm just saying if you are looking for buying something new and you don't want to buy like an expensive project bag, and you don't want to make your own project bag, you can find bags and things at thrift stores to work. You don't need to go on Amazon and buy, even though I used to love to do that. Another thing is that a lot of times people will end up with more project bags than they need because they decide to whip down or whatever. And I have been the recipient of some beautiful gifted rehomed project bags. And then also some people make their project bags from recycled material. I don't have them in here because I'm using them, like they're by my chair, but Stitching with Bears is upcycling quilts that are like cutter quilts that are not salvageable into project bags. So it's a good opportunity to sometimes support a local maker. It'd be cool if that local maker wanted to use like recycled materials and whatever, but they don't all. But if you don't want to do that and you can't afford that, you can find great items that will work at thrift stores. And then if you do want to buy one, but you want vintage materials, there are some people that are doing that as well. All right. Two more in this category of things that it'd be great if I could find them secondhand, but I don't always trust myself to find it. DMC for large monochromatic pieces. you can find secondhand DMC, and a lot of my DMC collection is older dye lots of DMC, and I just know that like if I go pull a piece, if I am just stitching out of my like 25% done master set, or even out of like my project bags, there'll be like a lot of stuff that's like older dye lots, and I just know like there may be a piece where I run out of the old dye lot, and that's okay. But if I was going to do a big monochromatic piece with DMC, I would not try to go to a thrift store to find it, and I would not cobble together different thrift store purchases for that. I would purchase that all new, all one dye lot, unless I happen to find, sometimes you'll find older boxes, like people who did embroidery and stuff tend to have like more of the same color. So sometimes I'll find boxes where it's like 20 old skeins and they're all the same old skein. Like if you ever need 725, I got like 20 old 725s, right? So like if it was something like that, yeah. But if I was like, I really want a specific DMC, I would not try to kit that up with secondhand stuff. I would get new, so that was all the same dye lot, and I would keep that all together separate from the rest of my stash. Because once you become a person who stashes some old DMC, some new, you just are then on the lookout for like, okay, is there any place in this project where if my DMC like switched, it'd be a problem? And then you kind of want to make sure you have enough to cover that, or go buy it new. All right, and then my last thing for this category are art supplies. Foam core, glue, Rit dye, paint. I have not had a hard time finding foam core, but the reason I put this in here is because I think foam core is more hit or miss. But today I bought Rit dye at the craft thrift store for $2 a bottle. I bought 4 colors. They had 5 colors, but I think one of the colors they had I either have or so close to what I have. And 2 of the colors I bought were caramel and taupe. So I'm going to play, I think the Thread Gremlins use taupe Rit dye on some of their fabric. It looks really pretty. So that will let me play with some neutrals. And then I have a sage green, which is going to be a really good mix with, I have like a neon green. So I think that will be fun. And then what do I have? Plus I like to I've started dyeing different color bases of older stuff. So that gives you even different variety of things. So, but it's not like a Goodwill is typically going to have Rit dye. Like I knew the craft thrift store carried it because I watched their Instagram channel, and they're going to let me teach a cross stitch class this summer there. I'm so excited. So, if you're, Rit dye is not that expensive at the craft store here. I think it's like $3 here. So I didn't save that much money, but on Amazon it's like $8. Like it can get higher. And I have some experimenting I want to do, and I have some gifts I want to make with some dyed Aida. So I'm very excited to play with some stuff. But how just nice to know too, like it's going to get used. It's not getting wasted. And then like art supplies, like hot glue. You will need a hot glue gun, go to the thrift store. Every thrift store in America has a hot glue gun at least once a month. You will find it. So if you're like, oh no, I really need some like something specific, that's harder. But if you're like, I need something this general category, go to like, look for your craft thrift stores, go to your thrift stores. Things like Rit dye too. If I had a specific color in mind, that'd be harder. But if you just want to be someone who can play with different colors, then it gets kind of cool. Like, what are they going to have? All right. Now, here's the 2 categories I would always buy new. I would never buy used. I would never hesitate to buy these new. And the first one is PDFs. So the reason that I can buy a pattern at the thrift store and then sell it on my Etsy shop is because the person who bought that physical copy maintained the ownership rights. There are some cross-stitch designers who like to have a note saying like, please don't sell this, but they're selling a piece of paper with instructions and you own it. And part of the reason that people feel comfortable buying more paper patterns than they'll ever stitch is because they know they retain some value and they're allowed to gift it or sell it. But I want to interview a copyright lawyer about cross-stitch copyright stuff, so we'll get to the bottom of that later. But anyway, But PDFs are different. PDFs are digital, and they do not come with the ownership rights to resell. You cannot even gift it. When I wanted to give one of my PDFs to Allison, because I bought 2 copies of Golden Delicious from the Artsy Housewife. I bought her main one, and I bought her dark Golden Delicious colorway. And I didn't realize when I did that, they're the same pattern with different colorways. And so when I wanted to give one to Allison, I literally emailed Artsy, or I messaged her on Etsy and asked her if it was cool if I gave it to my sister. Because, like, she is the one that has the right to say that digital file can be transferred or not. No one else. So if I wanted to get a PDF, I would not buy that secondhand. If someone is trying to sell on Etsy secondhand memorabilia PDFs, no, that's not okay. I would never buy a PDF of a cross-stitch pattern that somebody else had owned, and I would never try to sell one. I have a dragon's hoard of cross-stitch PDFs on my Dropbox. I can't give them to anyone. Even if it's a freebie. We say this, we have a bunch of videos about cross-stitch freebies, and we say this all the time in our freebies, like, you have to go get it the original way, and that designer has the right to take it down. And so there was a case where I got a pattern and then it was taken down 4 hours later, and I stitched it, and other people I know who wanted it couldn't stitch it because the original person has the right. So I would never buy a PDF secondhand, which means I would always buy that new. And I would never feel bad about that because that is how that technology works. Also, it is better for the environment. And then the last thing, I've mentioned this a couple of times, but I think it's important. So many of our cross-stitch businesses are small businesses, right? So, and a lot of the stuff that I've talked about today are things that I would buy where the option is buy it at a craft store, big business, buy it at the thrift store, supporting my local economy. A lot of thrift stores are tied to nonprofits that do great work with employment and housing and addiction. So support a nationwide corporation, even if it's in my backyard, or support the local economy. To me, that's a no-brainer. But, like, there's no big box store that sells our really good cross-stitch stuff anymore. So buy a paper pattern from a sweet online needlework shop or local needlework shop with 2 or 3 employees where the money goes instantly into either my community or back into theirs. Like, that's not a hard decision. And then it's just about being like, okay, if I'm only going to spend so much money on cross-stitch stuff, I can stretch my dollars more at the thrift store, which leaves what I do have left over for actual cross-stitch designers and needlework shops. And so, like, I never feel bad. I don't make that many purchases right now, but the few purchases I have made went directly to designers. And I don't feel bad about it. And I wouldn't feel bad placing an order at a local needlework shop, buying from a small dyer. Like, I'm not at all saying we shouldn't support our small cross-stitch businesses. Hey, so I just left my house after filming and realized I forgot to mention something and I don't want to leave it out. So also my makeup's still done. So when I'm talking about small businesses to support, I'm including small finishers, small project bag makers, small frame shops and custom frame shops, especially the ones that do needlepoint so well and really work with stitchers. So when I'm talking about supporting small businesses, I never feel guilty if what I'm choosing to purchase and what I need to buy new comes from a small local business, especially one who caters to cross stitch. That's very different than going to your craft store that frames everything from high school diplomas to I can't think of anything else to like family pictures or whatever, art, whatever. And they get tons of business, and you could buy a thrift store frame, or you could support them framing the 100th thing that day. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you're like, I really don't want to frame this myself, this piece is really special, I want UV glass or whatever, and you choose to go to like a small framer, like that's amazing and wonderful, especially if that small custom framer is one of the ones that really cares about what we do and really works hard for us. So I never feel guilty when I'm buying new things and it supports a small business regardless. It doesn't need to just be a designer. It can be any of the small businesses that like exist in our ecosystem to make our lives as stitchers better, or just a local business in your town that happens to do it really well. Okay. You don't have to buy everything secondhand to know that buying something secondhand makes a difference. I would love to hear your secondhand shopping tips, and if there's anything I missed that you would never buy used or something you would never buy new. Things you would never buy new. But also if there's something that you would never buy used, you can leave that in the comments as well. And yeah, so where do we go from here? Well, members, you guys are going to see me tomorrow night. If you're seeing this the day it comes out, I'm going to do a YouTube Stitch With Me live for members on Friday because we're trying to do those once a month because not every member can make our Sunday Stitch Togethers. And our next Stitch Together will be on Sunday. And then I'll have a Flosstube on Monday with my personal stitching, and you can hold me accountable for that. Frosted Tiny Town FFO. All right, thank you so much. Bye.